Bryon, you've worked software development for a long time. You've been both inside the government and now outside the government. Can you talk about any of the challenges that you have with DevOps, specifically with integrating and working with the UDL?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's important too to zoom out and look at, when we talk about data and integration, everything that was announced on day one, software powers all of that. It's been about a little over a decade now since Andreessen famously penned that software is eating the world. And a lot of military thinkers have said, if software is eating the world, it's certainly eating the war. It should be intuitive by this point, but if it's eating the world, it's also eating its orbit. Everything that we do in space is going to be powered by software. Every ground system, every network, every single thing is powered by software. We saw this in Ukraine when Starlink was able to send over-the-air updates to block or change and be able to be a countermeasure against Russian jamming. These kind of capabilities are critical. Unfortunately, our ability to deliver those in the Department of Defense is still very limited. We'll sit up on these stages and talk about all the advanced things that are coming down the line, but the dirty secret is everybody in here is still waiting for their emails to work. And so there's a lot, UDL gets a lot of unfair criticism in my view, as does Kessel Run and every single one of these software factories, because in order to do what they've been tasked to do, they have to solve a whole bunch of enterprise IT problems that are not their fault. And fault and responsibility don't go together. So the successful organizations I've seen, like the UDL, take things that aren't their fault and make them their responsibility, and they've addressed them as best they can. But there's a lot of underlying infrastructure challenges when it comes to cloud. For instance, the first two parts of the NIST definition of cloud computing are self-service and on-demand. And I've yet to run across an enterprise cloud in DoD or the Fed Civ space that is self-service and on-demand. Usually submit 15, 20 trouble tickets and wait a few months just to get access to your resources. So, I've come across, we've integrated with UDL quite a few times. I think it's a great capability. Most of the problems I see with it are inherently limitations of the underlying infrastructure, networking, as well as cloud platform that's available to them in the ATO process. So when I look at an organization like what Kessel Run did, and don't get me wrong, Kessel Run has all kinds of warts. I know better than anybody because I was responsible for a lot of them. There's a lot of things I would do differently. But what I'll tell you is the DIB once said that the number one thing that Kessel Run provided to the warfighters was hope. Pretty cheeky thing to say, but what was that really? If you look at it, we finally started achieving outcomes. We always have the impacts that senior leaders want to achieve, and then execution teams focus on all of the activities, so resourcing activities and features. And we assume that if we meet all the features in the specification sheet, that we will achieve outcomes. But that missing gap, what humans actually do with the software you deliver them, we never check back in to see okay, we met the requirement spec, but is it achieving the senior leader impacts because of the human behaviors, the outcomes are changing in the mission space. And so what really changed at Kessel Run, everybody talks about all kinds of things that they did, but I think this software factory movement in general provided us two things. Number one, unlocking continuous delivery. So truly being able to deploy software on demand to operations environments without a 2-year ATO process. I mean, literally, we can start a design with a user on Monday. By Friday, the design is complete, and the next week it's in operations. We can do that now. That's a solved problem. What that really unlocks that's even more important, and this is where it relates to how do we move forward with UDL and even great power competitions, is the ability to learn. The big problem in the department, especially in the acquisitions process, is that we've optimized for being right. So we spend tons of upfront time on planning and then assume that if we follow the plan, we'll get it right. But we know that's not true in the modern era, right? Even the best designers in the world, Amazon and Microsoft have both done studies on this, and they employ the best designers in the world to design solutions. For net new solutions, what we would call innovation, they get designs wrong 90% of the time, which lines up with most people's R&D. We know that R&D budgets, 90% will never see the light of day, and we bank on the 10% that takes us to the top. For existing systems where we're adding features to them, they get new feature requests wrong 2/3 of the time. And these are the best of people in the industry. And so continuous delivery unlocks our ability to put things into the hands of warfighter, get real feedback, and learn so that we can make it right. And that's the thing that we should be focused on. What's limiting us, the challenges that I see to that today, is that underlying infrastructure. Every organization that sets out to deliver mission applications, even simple ones, is looking at a scenario where there's no development environment for them, or if they get access to one, either by luck or sheer force of will from a bunch of airman coders cobbling together a platform, or they're paying a large fee to the enterprise to use the solution like Platform One, if they can get through all of that, then their deployment environments are limited as well. And so this ability to take solutions into production is an enterprise IT challenge that we're still not addressing. And I think the last thing I'll say on that is problematic is when that starts to happen, then enterprise's natural reaction is to mandate the enterprise solutions. And that's potentially the worst thing you could do in that scenario. Because now you've removed all incentives for the enterprise IT providers to provide a good customer experience. If you have to win people's business, you provide a really great service. If you're mandated, all incentives go out the window. So the thing that we're trying to work with the department and all the way up at DoD and even congressional levels is to set benchmarks for DevOps for how do you measure your environments. So before you go about mandating this is the mandated cloud solution or this is the mandated platform solution, making sure it's actually meeting customers' needs. Everybody's got their minds wrapped around efficiency, but we still haven't figured out efficacy yet. So that's where I think the focus should be, is how do we get efficacy in the IT infrastructure?
Yeah. So for my initial looking under the hood, there's a lot of infrastructure issues that are inside our space domain awareness architecture, because much of the first principles of when it was designed really in many ways for science and technology initiatives. And we have labs using things and things like that. And their timelines for making a decision are dramatically different than the timelines required of a U.S. Space Commander, right? General Whiting. I'll highlight a few things that you talked about and the successes we've had with the UDL already. The UDL has over 4,000 users already registered that use data from the sensor suites to help make decisions. And in those 4,000 users, we have 22 foreign partners. So it is a rubric that will continue to move forward. On Monday, I was on a stage at a different location, but I told everyone that one of the challenges I had seen earlier in my career was at Air Force Space Command was what I deemed the good idea ferry. So every time the good idea ferry came through, we changed the plan and we made no progress. The UDL is our unified data library. It's compliant with the larger DAF initiatives for JADC2 and the things that we're doing with C2BMC. And we are making progress. The key thing we have to do as senior leaders is remove obstacles and stay the course. Because as we heard in the big ballroom, we're out of time. We're out of time. So thank you for that. If I could, I'd like to pivot